check if we're live. Bro, last time it took me like 5-10 whole minutes to do this. If only I could just check, but I don't know where the fuck. Okay, bet we are. I think we're good. Dude, I checked my video from yesterday, and I speak really quietly, and you can barely hear me. It's really early in the morning. I don't want to do this. I don't know how I'm getting myself to do this. And I suck at reading too, but fuck. Here we are. Also, we can't continue reading Inventors for Meaning or The Alchemist because they have copyright. I didn't get striked, but I just realized you can't do that shit, so I looked for whatchamacallit, the public library, no, the Internet Archive. So that's what we're gonna read. Gotta look for it again. I had it on my phone, but I really wasn't prepared this morning. I'm never prepared in the morning, bro. Fuck this. Hey, at least I'm attempting. I'm doing something. Starting my day with the right foot. Picture of Dorian Gray, King in Yellow, Benjamin Franklin's autobiography, right here, Crime and Punishment. Bro, I'll be real, this might be a really challenging book for me, but we're gonna attempt. Alright. Crime. Damn. Let me just get a sip of water real quick. Sorry about that. I also need to start warming up or doing some tongue twisters or something. Crime and Punishment in the Modern Library of the World's Best Books. The publishers will be pleased to send upon request an illustrated folder setting forth the purpose and scope of the Modern Library and listing each volume in the series. Every reader of books will find titles he has been looking for, handsomely printed in unabridged editions and in unusually low price. Damn, we just ate that ad, bro, in the book. Alright, not for real, Crime and Punishment by Fyodor Dostoevsky. Translated by Constance Garnett. The Modern Library, New York. Okay. Part 1, Chapter 1. On an exceptionally hot evening, early in July, a young man came out of the garret in which he lodged in the S place and walked slowly, as though in hesitation, towards K Bridge. He had successfully avoided meeting his landlady on the staircase. His garret was under the roof of a high, five-storied house, and was more like a cupboard than a room. The landlady who provided him with garret, I don't know how to say that, to be honest, so bear with me. Diners and attendants. Sorry, let me read that again. The landlady who provided him with garret, dinners, and attendants lived on the floor below, and every time he went out, he was obliged. I assume it's like obligated, but it says obliged. I don't know how to read that, bro. Damn. Anyways, he was obligated to pass her kitchen, the door of which invariably stood open. And each time he passed, the young man had a sick, frightened feeling, which made him scowl and feel ashamed. He was hopelessly in debt to his landlady and was afraid of meeting her. This was not because he was cowardly and abject, quite the contrary, but for some time past, he had been in an overstrained, irritable condition, verging on hypochondria. He had become so completely absorbed in himself and isolated from his fellows that he dreaded meeting not only his landlady, but anyone at all. He was crushed by poverty, but the anxieties of his position had of late ceased to weigh upon him. He had given up on attending to matters of practical importance. He had lost all desire to do so. Nothing that any landlady could do had a real terror for him, but to be stopped on the stairs, to be forced to listen to her trivial, irrelevant gossip, to pestering demands for payment, threats and complaints, and to rack his brains for excuses to prevaricate. I told you guys this is gonna be a hard read for me. Prevaricate, to lie, no. Rather than that, he would creep down the stairs like a cat and slip out unseen. This evening, however, on coming out into the street, he became acutely aware of his fears. I want to attempt a thing like that, and I'm frightened by these trifles, he thought, with an odd smile. Yes, all is in a man's hands, and he lets it all slip from cowardice. I think it's cowardice. That's in an axiom. It would be interesting to know what it is men are most afraid of. Taking a new step, uttering a new word. That's me right now, bro. Uttering a new word is what they fear most. But I am talking too much. It's because I chatter that I do nothing, or perhaps it is that I chatter because I do nothing. I've learned to chatter this last month, lying for days together in my den thinking of Jack, the giant killer. Why am I going there now, as I am capable of that? Is that serious? Is that not serious at all? It's simply a fantasy to amuse myself, a plaything. Yes, maybe it is a plaything. The heat in the street was terrible, and the airlessness, the bustle, and the plaster scaffolding bricks and dust all about him. And that special Petersburg stench, so familiar to all who were unable to get out of town in summer, all worked painfully upon the young man's already overwrought nerves. Insufferable stench from the pot houses, which are particularly numerous in that part of the town, and the drunken men whom he met continually. Although it was a working day, completed the revolting misery of the picture, an expression of the profoundest disgust. Sorry, guys, I'm getting lost. An expression of the profoundest disgust gleamed for a moment in the young man's refined face. He was, by the way, exceptionally handsome, above the average in height, slim, well built, with beautiful dark eyes and dark brown hair. Soon he sank into deep thought, or more accurately speaking, into a complete blankness of that word's so blurry. Blankness of, I guess it says mind. Into a complete blankness of mind. He walked along, not observing what was about him and not caring to observe it. From the time to time, he would mutter something, from the habit of talking to himself, to which he had just confessed. At these moments, he would become conscious that his ideas were sometimes in a tangle and that he was Satious? Never heard that word, Mark. Oh, conscious, my fucking dumbass. That's embarrassing. Anyways. At these moments, he would become conscious that his ideas were sometimes in a tangle, that he was very weak. For 2 days, he had scarcely tasted food. He was so badly dressed that even a man accustomed to shabbiness would have been ashamed to be seen in the street in such rags. In that quarter of the town, however, scarcely any shortcomings in dress would have created surprise, owing to the proximity of the haymaker, the number of establishments of bad character, the preponderance of the trading and the working class population crowded in these streets and alleys. The heart of Petersburg, types so various were to be seen in the streets, and that no figure, however queer, would have caused surprise. But there was such accumulated bitterness and contempt in the young man's heart that in spite of all his fastidiousness of youth, in spite of all his fastidiousness of youth, he minded his rags least of all in the street. It was a different matter when he met with acquaintances or with former fellow students, whom indeed he disliked meeting at any time. And yet, when a drunken man who, from some known reason, was being taken somewhere in a huge wagon dragged by a heavy dray horse. I don't know what that means. Anyways, dragged by a heavy dray horse, suddenly shouted at him as he drove past. "Hey there, German hatter? I think it's hatter, bro. Hey there, German hatter." Bawling at the top of his voice and pointing at him, the young man stopped suddenly and clutched tremendously at his hat. It was a tall, round... Fuck, I lost myself. At the top of his voice and pointing at him, the young man stopped suddenly and clutched tremendously at his hat. It was a tall, round hat from Zimmerman's, but completely worn out, rusty with age, all torn and dispattered, brimless and bent on one side in a most unseemly fashion. Not shame, however, but quite an other feeling, akin to terror, had overtaken him. "I knew it," he muttered in confusion. "I thought so. That's the worst of all. Why a stupid thing like this, the most trivial detail, might spoil the whole plan. Yes, my hat is too noticeable. It looks absurd, and that makes it noticeable. With my rags, I ought to wear a cap, any sort of old pancake, but not this grotesque thing. Nobody wears such a hat. It would be noticed a mile off. It would be remembered. What matters is that people would remember it, and that would give them a clue. For this business, one should be as little conspicuous as possible. Trifles are what matter. Why is this? Why? It's just trifles that always ruin everything." He had not far to go. He knew indeed how many steps it was from the gate of his lodging house, exactly 730. He had counted them once, when he had been lost in dreams. At the time he had put no faith into those dreams, and was only tantalizing himself by their hideous but daring recklessness. Now, a month later, he had begun to look upon them differently, and in spite of the monologues in which he jeered at his own impotence and indecision, he had involuntarily come to regard this hideous dream as an exploit to be attempted. Although he still did not realize this himself, he was positively going now for a rehearsal of his project. At this very step, his excitement grew more and more violent. With a sinking heart and a nervous tremor, he went up to a huge house, which on the other side looked on to the canal, and on the other into the street. This house was let out in tiny tenements. This house was let out in tiny tenements. Bro, this book is cooking me, but that's what we're here for. We're here to practice my English, because I'm a Spanish speaker. I'm a Spanish speaker. Hablo español. El español es mi primer idioma. Spanish is my first language. It's okay. I'm learning. Anyways. Sorry, I forgot where we left out. This house was let out in tiny tenements and was inhabited by working people of all kinds: tailors, locksmiths, cooks, Germans of sorts, girls picking up a living as best as they could, pretty clerks, etc. And there was continual coming and going through the two gates, and in two country yards of the house, three, three or four doorkeepers, were employed on the building. The young man was very glad to meet none of them, and at once slipped unnoticed through the door on the right, and up the staircase. It was a back staircase, dark and narrow, but he was familiar with it already, and knew his way, and he liked all these surroundings in such darkness. Even the most inquisitive eyes were not to be dreaded. If I am so scared now, what would it be if it somehow came, that word's blurry, say to pass? If it somehow came to pass that I were really going to do it. Let me read that again. If I am so scared now, what would it be? What would it be if it somehow came to pass that I were really going to do it? He could not help asking himself as he reached the fourth story. There, his progress was barred by some porters who were engaged in moving furniture out of a flat. He knew that the flat had been occupied by a German clerk in the civil service and his family. The German was moving out then, and so the fourth floor on the staircase would be untenanted except by the old woman. That's a good thing anyway, he thought to himself as he rang the bell of the old woman's flat. The bell gave a faint tinkle as though it were made of tin and not copper. The little flats in such houses always made bells that ring like that. He had forgotten the note of that bell, and now its peculiar tinkle seemed to remind him of something and to bring it clearly before him. He started his nerves. His nerves were terribly overstrained by now. In a little while, the door was opened. A tiny crack. The old woman eyed her visitor with evident distrust through the crack, and nothing could be seen but her little eyes, glittering in the darkness. But seeing a number of people on the landing, she grew bolder and opened the door wide. The young man stepped into the dark entry, which was partitioned off from the tiny kitchen. The old woman stood facing him in silence and looking inquiringly at him. She was diminutive, withered up old woman of 60 with sharp, malignant eyes and a sharp little nose. Her colorless, somewhat grizzled hair was thickly smeared with oil, and she wore no kerchief over it. Round her thin, long neck, which looked like a hen's leg,
was knotted some sort of flannel rag, and in spite of the heart, in spite of the, bro, fucking I'm hard, bro, but I'm not giving up. Alright, let's go back. Around her thin, long neck, which looked like a hen's leg, was knotted some sort of flannel rag, and in spite of the heat, there hung flapping on her shoulders a mangy fur cape, yellow with age. The old woman coughed and groaned at every instant. The young man must have looked at her with a rather peculiar expression, for a gleam of mistrust came into her eyes again. Raskolnikov, Raskolnikov, a student. I came here a month ago. The young man made haste to mutter, with a half bow, remembering that he ought to be more polite. I remember, my good sir. I remember quite well your coming here, the old woman said distinctly, still keeping her inquiring eyes on his face. And here I am again, on the same errand. Raskolnikov, Raskolnikov continued, a little disconcerted and surprised at the old woman's mistrust. Perhaps she is always like that, though only I did not notice it the other time. He thought with an uneasy feeling that the woman paused, as though hesitating, then stepped on one side, and pointing to the door of the room, she said, letting her visitor pass in front of her, "Step in, my good sir." The little room into which the young man walked, with yellow paper on the walls, geraniums, and muslin curtains in the windows, was brightly lighted up that moment by the setting sun. So the sun will shine like this. I need to pause where I'm putting up. I'm gonna just wrap up this page. Let me run it back. Step in, my good sir. The little room into which the young man walked, with yellow paper on the walls, geraniums and muslin curtains in the windows, was brightly lightened up at that moment by the setting sun. So the sun will shine like this then, too, flashed as it were by chance though Raskolnikov's mind, and with a rapid glance he scanned everything in the room, trying as far as possible to notice and remember its arrangement. But there was nothing special in the room. The furniture, all very old and yellow wood, consisted of a sofa with a huge bed, wood in black, and an oval table in front of the sofa, a dressing table with a looking glass fixed on it between A dressing table with a looking glass fixed on it between the windows, chairs along the walls, and 2 or 3 halfpenny prints in yellow frames, representing German damsels with birds in their hands. That was all. In the corner, a light was burning before the small icon. Everything was very clean. The floor and the furniture were brightly polished. Everything shone. Lizavetta's work, thought the young man. There was not a speck of dust to be seen in the whole flat. It's in the houses of spiteful old widows that one finds such cleanliness. Raskolnikov thought again, and he stole a curious glance at the con curtain over the door leading into another tiny room, in which stood the old woman's bed and chest of drawers. Drawers, and into which he had never looked before. And I'm just wrap it up there. Bro, today was tough. I ain't gonna front, bro. I want you guys to see too what the fuck my fucking book looks like. How to justice. I'm over here for now. Look at this shit, bro. Fuck, I should open it. Give me 1 second, never mind. Bro, I need to get better at this shit, bro. And I will, that's what I'm practicing. But goddamn, shit's tough. I mean, at least no viewers for now, so I'm not gonna worry about that. But look at this shit, bro. I am barely reading that, bro. Even if it was very neat. But anyways, that's it. I'm wrapping this shit up. Have a good day. Have a good day. Make it count. No sunshine today. Cloudy day. What's the weather today? The weather is cold. And I'm gonna tell you in Celsius, so you figure it out. Today we have a low of 19 degrees Celsius. No, we have a low of 18 degrees Celsius and a high of 42. Alright, dip.